As part of our Local Matters series, we're taking an inside look at elections on the local and national levels in states across the U.S. In West Virginia, Republicans are vying to challenge Democratic Senator Joe Manchin for his seat this November. The favorites in the race squared off in a televised debate on Tuesday. A recent Fox News poll shows Congressman Evan Jenkins leading West Virginia Attorney General Patrick Morrisey and businessman Don Blankenship. Brad McElhinny is a statewide correspondent for West Virginia Metronews. He joins me now from Charleston, West Virginia. So, Brad, Jenkins and Morrisey had some contentious exchanges in Tuesday's debate. Let's take a listen to some of that.
He actually has been very liberal. If you go Obamacare, checkbox, he supported. Hillary, he went and rallied for Hillary. Nancy Pelosi, John Kerry, Planned Parenthood spending just a couple weeks ago. Evan, you should be ashamed of yourself for that outrageous vote, killing the unborn.
I've fought to defund Planned Parenthood. I have stood up for life, and as a matter of fact, the National Right to Life organization has given me a 100% voting record. You know, I'm the one that actually has a voting record. Patrick, Don, others can talk about how they will vote. 100% pro-life, 100% defending the Second Amendment with the national right to life.
Brad, what stood out to you from their debate performances?
Well, that kind of contentious exchange, just like you just saw, was the main thing. Jenkins and Morrisey, the two frontrunners, who are very close, really close to the margin of error, going neck and neck against each other, back and forth, calling each other liars, questioning each other's character. Blankenship, who has an enormous blemish on his own resume that we'll probably get to in a minute, but standing by much of the time and then coming in when he had an opportunity to talk to say things like, yeah, they're both right, they're both liars. So this was 1 week before the election here in West Virginia, remains contentious, up for grabs really for any of these candidates, but those two, Jenkins and Morrisey, going at each other.
Well, so Don Blankenship made headlines this week with an ad calling Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, quote, Cocaine Mitch. Blankenship spent a year in prison stemming from a coal mine explosion that killed 29 people. What should we know about Don Blankenship, and does he have a chance to secure the nomination?
That's the main thing, is the trial that led to a misdemeanor conviction and a 1-year jail sentence for Don Blankenship coming out of that explosion. He was the head of Massey Energy, and the claim was that he instituted management practices that led to the conditions that caused the mine to blow up. Blankenship has entered the campaign freshly out of getting out of jail. It was thought to be a novelty at one point, but from the beginning, everybody knew the skeleton in his closet. There was nothing worse that you could say about him. He's made millions of dollars from his time in the coal industry, and he's spending it on this campaign. His campaign is almost entirely self-funded. A couple $1 million he's put into commercials. So he has made it competitive through being able to fund his own campaign.
Those people who support Don Blankenship, what is it they say they find appealing about him as a candidate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we're living in an era where the president, for example, has said so many things that a certain segment of the voting population that thinks, well, he says what's on his mind. That's refreshing to some people. People think that whether they believe the statement or not, people may think it's genuine. In this case, you've got a guy named Don Blankenship who, you know the worst thing about him already, and it's going to be a deal breaker for a lot of Republican voters. But there are some who will say, I see where he's coming from, I believe in him. And they're all three running on this concept of draining the swamp.
Well, both Morrisey and Jenkins have made a point of aligning themselves with President Trump. And you just outlined Don Blankenship's posture in this race. How big of a factor is President Trump's agenda in this race?
It's been a major factor, particularly President Trump's view toward federal regulation. So President Trump won West Virginia by 40% of the vote. actually got 60% of the vote against Hillary Clinton in the presidential campaign. And you're showing those statistics now, 87% approval rate here in West Virginia. So it's major. Each of the other two candidates, Jenkins and Morrisey, have said everything they can to align themselves with the president, including some of those buzzwords, drain the swamp, build the wall. And that was apparent in last night's debate, but has been apparent throughout the campaign.
So you mentioned a moment ago federal regulation being something that is top of mind for voters in West Virginia. What else? Is it social issues? What are those issues that are most important to Republican primary voters as they select their Senate candidate?
You know, the social issues are some. West Virginia is largely a right-to-life state. West Virginia, largely a pro-Second Amendment state. But there is there's a health epidemic that's happening in West Virginia, and that's the opioid crisis that's largely taken shape here. And each of the candidates, particularly Morrisey and Jenkins, were asked questions in last night's debate having to do with that. Morrisey has a background as a lobbyist. His wife remains a lobbyist, while Morrisey's Attorney General's office here in West Virginia has sued actors in the pharmaceutical industry. His wife has continued to be a member of a firm that has lobbied for the pharmaceutical industry in Washington. And Jenkins has represented a district that's been largely hit by the opioid crisis. So the question last night was, why do you deserve a promotion when your district is in the shape it's in right now as a result of this opioid epidemic? Neither of the candidates, the questions that were addressed to those two candidates in regards to the opioid epidemic didn't reflect real well on them.
Extremely high political stakes in your state. Brad McElhinny in Charleston, West Virginia. Brad, thank you so much.